If you're new here, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because today's story isn't about heroes or villains. It's about the one thing that can shatter an empire built on fear, a human who refuses to kneel. The Thauran dominion stretched across 14 systems, ruled by an empress whose word bent entire species to her will. Queen Viroliths, the Iron Matron, was said to command armies that sang her name into the void. Every word she spoke was law. Every breath she allowed was mercy. And yet, in the glittering cage of her throne hall, she kept one creature no one could quite understand. A man. A Terran. A slave who refused to break. His name was Elias Ward. Once a combat engineer in the Terran uprising, now a captured remnant of a species the Thauran regarded as primitive, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. They'd burned his cities, disarmed his people, and paraded him through the marble corridors of their bioluminescent capital as a trophy of subjugation. But even chained and silenced, Elias carried something they couldn't extract, a stubborn human fire that flickered behind his calm eyes. Each day he worked in the palace of biolume glass, a structure that pulsed with its own heartbeat. The walls shimmered with fluid light, and veins of living metal snaked through the floors, humming softly with alien power. He maintained the lattice cores that kept the structure alive, recalibrating their energy balance, replacing crystalline organs that beat too slow. To most it was routine. To Elias it was a reminder: this empire thought life could be engineered, emotion designed and discarded. When he spoke, his voice carried a quiet defiance that unsettled the guards. They called him Flesh Tool. They spat commands in clipped tones, expecting immediate obedience. But Elias never bowed quickly enough. Never looked away long enough. They beat him once, twice, until he learned to stand still, expressionless, while planning each word like a move on a battlefield. The queen noticed him on the 5th rotation of her moon. She had grown bored of the endless procession of courtiers and victories. From her throne, a massive organism of fused bone and crystal, she watched him adjust the palace's power lines from across the chamber. When he finished, he didn't kneel. He simply looked at her, eyes steady, jaw set, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The hall went silent. No one ever met her gaze uninvited. Her eyes were pools of liquid silver, laced with a faint shimmer of psychic energy. When she rose, the air itself seemed to bow. "You do not avert your eyes, Terran?" Her voice was a whisper sharpened by centuries of command. Elias tilted his head slightly, a deliberate slowness that bordered on insolence. "You asked for the lattice to be recalibrated, not my submission." The guards flinched. One stepped forward, drawing an energy lash. But the queen lifted a single finger, halting him mid-strike. The silence deepened, thick and electric. "You presume to define obedience?" she asked, descending the throne steps. Her movements were both predatory and graceful, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the chamber's vaulted dome. "I define work," Elias replied. "You can have the task done right, or you can have me on my knees. You can't have both." The whip cracked through the air, but it wasn't the guard this time. It was her will. Pain exploded through Elias's skull, his vision fracturing into color. The Thauran didn't punish with tools. Their minds reached directly into yours, burning your thoughts, erasing your control. He staggered but didn't fall. He met her gaze through the haze of pain and somehow smiled. It wasn't mockery, it was defiance wrapped in dignity. Her psychic hold faltered. The pain stopped as abruptly as it began. For the briefest second, the Queen of 14 Systems stood face to face with a slave who hadn't begged for mercy. The hall exhaled. Guards exchanged nervous glances. The air smelled of metal and fear. "Leave us," she said finally, her voice low. When the others had gone, she circled him slowly. "What drives you, human? Fear? Oh. Or the illusion that you still matter?" Elias breathed carefully, keeping his stance upright. "None of those. I just don't like bullies." The corner of her mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it wasn't fury either. "Your kind confuses defiance with virtue. You mistake survival for strength. And you mistake obedience for peace," he said quietly. That earned him another flicker of psychic pressure, just enough to make his knees weaken. But she didn't continue. Instead, she studied him as if examining a riddle carved in flesh. "You would defy me even now? I don't know how to be anything else." The queen turned away, her long tendrils of bioluminescent hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Her voice softened. "You are either the bravest creature I've ever met, or the most foolish." Elias exhaled. On Earth, those are usually the same thing. For a moment, the vast throne room felt smaller, two beings suspended in a silence neither understood. Then the queen straightened, reclaiming her authority with the ease of breathing. Your insolence amuses me, Terran. I will not destroy you, yet. Grateful, he said, his tone dry. She gestured to the guards returning through the grand archway. Take him back to the lattice chambers. Let him continue his work. As they led him away, he glanced back once. She was still watching him, silver eyes unreadable, one hand resting on the organic rail of her throne. That night, as he returned to his quarters, a cell of glass and faintly glowing veins, Elias stared at the alien sky through the translucent ceiling. He thought of Earth, of the smell of rain and the sound of old songs played through static. He wondered how long before they finally broke him. But deep down he already knew they wouldn't. Far above, in her chamber of light and shadow, the queen couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed that human's words, his unflinching eyes, his maddening calm. It had been centuries since anyone had dared to speak to her like that. Centuries since she'd felt the faint, impossible warmth of curiosity. She told herself it was irritation. Interest was weakness. And yet, as the palace lights dimmed and the lattice pulsed softly, the same lattice his hands had touched, she found herself whispering into the silence, almost to herself. Elias Ward. The palace heard her. So did something else. Something that, for the first time in the Thauran capital's long and perfect history, felt human. If you're still watching, tell me what you'd do in Elias's place. Kneel to survive, or stand and risk everything? Comment your choice below. And don't forget, the next part of this story will change everything. The weeks that followed felt like a siege measured not in weapons but in will. Elias Ward became both curiosity and contagion within the palace. The Thauran whispered that the human had survived the queen's psychic wrath and still walked upright. They watched him with a mix of fear and fascination, as if he carried an unseen fire that might spread if they looked too long. Every day the tasks grew harder. He was sent into the lowest chambers beneath the palace of biolume glass, where the air tasted like copper and ozone. The bioreactor pulsated there, a heart of living crystal that powered the queen's domain. His orders were to cleanse its conduits and recalibrate the pulse rhythm, an impossible task meant to exhaust him. The guards stood above, their eyes gleaming through translucent helmets. He worked in silence. His hands, calloused from Terran steel, now touched alien glass that pulsed like veins under skin. Every movement was deliberate, his mind dissecting their technology, learning how their systems breathed. In every spark and hum he saw patterns, weaknesses, not of circuits but of a civilization that had forgotten humility. When one of the younger attendants slipped and sliced his arm on a shard of the biocrystal, Elias acted without thinking. He tore a strip from his uniform and pressed it against the wound, murmuring calm instructions as the frightened alien trembled. The guard barked an order, telling him to step away, but the young attendant whispered, voice shaking. He helped me. It was small, almost nothing. Yet in that palace, kindness was rebellion. Word spread faster than plasma fire. The queen summoned him again. She sat upon her living throne, motionless except for the gentle undulation of her luminous hair. The air shimmered with psychic tension as Elias was escorted before her. The chamber was empty this time, no courtiers, no witnesses. Just the queen and the man she couldn't quite categorize. I hear you've been teaching my attendants mercy, she said. Her tone was calm, but the air around her wavered like heat over a furnace. I was teaching them efficiency, Elias replied, unflinching. A worker who bleeds to death isn't useful to anyone. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. You twist reason into insolence with remarkable ease. I speak plainly. Then speak plainly now, she said, rising from her throne. What do you hope to gain from Defiance? From these gestures of weakness you call compassion. Elias hesitated, not because he feared her, but because he wanted her to listen. Where I come from, compassion isn't weakness. It's what holds the pieces together when everything else falls apart. Her eyes narrowed. You think your species understands strength better than mine? I think your species confuses control with strength, he said. And you? He stopped, then exhaled. You lead an empire that obeys you out of fear. That's not rule. That's rot wearing a crown. The psychic blow came without warning. It felt like molten glass searing through his mind, but he refused to fall. His teeth clenched, vision darkening, yet he stayed upright, every muscle screaming as if his thoughts themselves were under assault. Then, something unexpected happened. The pain faltered, not because she stopped but because the feedback struck her too. Her expression twitched, eyes widening as the link between them surged both ways. She felt something she had never known in centuries of power, Resistance that wasn't hatred, a barrier built not from anger but from conviction. When she released him, the silence rang louder than her voice. "What are you?" she whispered, her tone no longer cold but curious. "Human," he said simply. "The kind that doesn't kneel." For the first time she laughed, not mockingly but softly, like someone rediscovering the sound of it. "Perhaps I've been too merciful with you. Perhaps I should see how long that defiance lasts under closer watch." Elias met her gaze. "Do what you have to. Just remember, cages don't make loyalty." Her expression darkened again, though not with anger. Something else flickered beneath the surface, something she didn't name. "You truly believe you can endure anything?" "I already have," he said. The queen studied him for a long moment, then turned away. "You will dine with me tomorrow." The guards stiffened, glancing at one another in disbelief. No slave had ever been invited to dine with the queen, let alone one who had defied her openly. Elias said nothing as the order settled like a weight in the air. When the guards escorted him out, he felt their unease as much as his own. In the corridors of living glass, whispers chased his footsteps. The human was being favored, tested, or doomed. None could tell which. That night, in his chamber, Elias sat by the faint glow of the palace walls and tried to steady his thoughts. The queen's laughter still echoed faintly in his mind, strange and haunting. For all her cruelty, there was something beneath it, a loneliness as vast as the empire she ruled. He thought about her words, about strength and control. About how easily power devours empathy until it becomes hollow. He wasn't sure what she wanted from him. Submission, entertainment, or perhaps something she couldn't admit even to herself. When he closed his eyes, he remembered her eyes flashing with surprise when the psychic link backfired. For a heartbeat, he had seen her not as an empress but as a woman startled by pain. And for that heartbeat, the vast distance between them had felt almost bridgeable. The palace dimmed into night mode, walls pulsing slower as if the building itself were asleep. Somewhere above, in chambers unreachable by anyone else, Queen Virile that stood before her mirror of liquid silver, tracing her reflection's edges with a trembling hand. She could still feel the echo of his mind, that alien defiance that refused to be erased. Her advisors would call it contamination. Her council would demand his execution. Yet as the light faded, she found herself whispering, not a command but a question she had never thought she'd ask. "Why does he not fear me?" The mirror, silent and perfect, gave no answer. But deep within the palace lattice, the systems pulsed once, a faint ripple that almost resembled a heartbeat. The next day's dawn would bring the meal she had ordered, the confrontation she claimed to desire. But as the queen gazed at the horizon of her glowing world, she realized with a sudden chill that curiosity, once born, was harder to control than rebellion. And far below, Elias Ward was already awake, washing the dust from his hands and preparing for a dinner he knew would not be about food. He wasn't sure if he was being invited as a guest or summoned as prey. Either way, he smiled. He had learned one truth about empires: the moment they started asking questions, they were already beginning to crack. The dining hall of the Thauron Palace glowed like the inside of a living jewel. Translucent walls shimmered with veins of light that pulsed to the rhythm of some hidden heart deep within the structure. Elias stood at the threshold, feeling the air hum faintly against his skin. The queen had not lied. She had summoned him to dine. And the guards who led him here were careful not to meet his gaze. At the far end of the hall, Queen Virile that's waited. She sat upon a throne carved from the same luminous bone that threaded the palace, though here it seemed to pulse brighter, as if the living structure itself leaned toward her presence. Before her, the table stretched endlessly, its surface alive with bioluminescent dishes that drifted slightly above the glass, shifting color and shape as though deciding what they wanted to be. Elias hesitated before stepping forward. Every part of this was wrong, an emperor's feast offered to a slave. But he understood enough of power to recognize when he was being studied. The queen was not offering him a meal, she was watching to see if he would choke on it. "Sit," she said. The command was not harsh but absolute. He obeyed, lowering himself to the far end of the table. Between them, 1,000 glowing plates shimmered like tiny galaxies. "Do you know why you are here?" she asked. "To be humiliated, most likely," he said, keeping his tone measured. Her silver eyes flickered with amusement. "You presume too much. Or perhaps too little. I brought you here to understand why you continue to exist." He met her gaze. "Because you let me. I could unmake you in a breath." "I don't doubt it. But you haven't. That's the part that puzzles me." The corner of her mouth lifted. "You think I show mercy? I think you're curious." She regarded him for a moment, then reached for one of the dishes. The object morphed into something that resembled a liquid jewel, suspended midair. This is sustenance, though not as you know it. Consume it. He looked at the floating mass, its scent sharp and metallic. If I eat that, will it eat back? That earned a genuine laugh, low and rich, the sound of someone unaccustomed to laughter. You distrust everything you don't understand. Experience taught me to. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small bundle wrapped in cloth, a piece of flatbread baked from the nutrient paste he'd bartered off a guard. Then we're even. Her brows arched. You bring food to my table? Something simple. Something real. He tore the bread in half and set one piece near her side. You can't know a world if you never taste its flaws. She examined it, clearly torn between insult and intrigue. Finally, she took the piece, turning it in her fingers before tasting a corner. Her expression shifted slightly. Crude. Dry. Unrefined. But honest. She looked at him then, truly looked, not as an owner assessing property but as a being meeting another. You are unlike any species I've conquered, she said softly. Most break by the second lash. You adapt. Humans are good at surviving bad odds. You mistake endurance for strength. And you mistake isolation for control. Her gaze sharpened. Explain. You rule by fear, by command. But that kind of strength only lasts until someone stops being afraid. Then all you have left is the echo of your own voice. Her jaw tightened. You speak as though you understand power. I understand loneliness. That silenced her. The room's living lights dimmed slightly, as if the palace itself leaned closer to listen. After a long pause, she asked quietly, Do you pity me, Terran? He shook his head. No. I think you built a cage and forgot you're inside it too. Her fingers froze mid-motion. For an instant, something cracked beneath her regal composure, a flicker of recognition she didn't want to see. Viral turned away, standing from the table. You overstep as always. I just speak plainly. Plain words can still wound. They only wound when they're true. She turned back, eyes shimmering like molten silver. Careful human. My patience has limits. So does your loneliness, he said, rising slowly. The space between them seemed to hum. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, until the faint glow from her skin reflected in his eyes. You defy me because you think I won't destroy you, she whispered. Perhaps I should remind you what I am. Elias didn't move. You don't need to remind me what you are. I think you've forgotten what you could be. Her hand lifted, and for a moment he thought she'd strike him. Instead, her fingers brushed his face, curious, hesitant. The contact was cool at first, then almost warm. The palace lights pulsed faster, reacting to her rising emotions. She withdrew her hand quickly as if burned. You twist my curiosity into weakness. You're the one who touched me, he said quietly. Her eyes flashed. Leave. Before I change my mind. Elias stepped back, but his voice was calm. You asked why I still exist. Maybe it's because some part of you needs me to. The queen didn't respond. She turned her back, staring into the glowing horizon beyond the glass walls. When he was gone, she stood motionless, her pulse resonating through the palace. Her thoughts spiraled, colliding with fragments of memory, her coronation drenched in blood, her mother's last command echoing in her mind. Rule without feeling, for feeling is surrender. But tonight she had felt. For the first time in centuries, she had felt something other than conquest or fear, and it frightened her more than any enemy ever had. She looked at the half-eaten piece of Terran bread still resting on the table. It glowed faintly under the palace lights, absurdly out of place in her perfect world. Honest, she murmured, tasting the word as if it were foreign. Outside, the twin moons rose, casting long beams through the glass hall. She stood in their light, hands trembling slightly, her reflection fractured by the living architecture that pulsed with her heartbeat. She told herself she would destroy him soon, before his words burrowed deeper, before his defiance infected the core of what she was. And yet, when the night came and her palace dimmed to quiet luminescence, the queen found herself whispering his name again, barely audible. Elias. The palace walls seemed to pulse once in response, a subtle echo like a sigh. She told herself it was only the rhythm of the reactors. But deep down she already knew it wasn't. Rumors traveled faster than light inside the palace of Biolium glass. By the time the third dawn rose, every corridor whispered of the same forbidden truth. The queen had broken bread with her human slave. The Thauran nobles, proud and pitiless, were furious. In their culture, affection was decay, emotion was corrosion. To dine with a slave was to stain the throne itself. Elias noticed the change immediately. Guards who once ignored him now stared too long, their eyes bright with suspicion. His tools were replaced twice in a single day, likely bugged for surveillance. Even the palace lattice, that great living network he maintained, began to feel like it was watching him, its pulses subtly offbeat, its rhythm learning his. He said nothing. He'd spent too long under oppressive regimes to waste breath on paranoia. Instead he kept working, kept surviving, the same quiet defiance shaping every movement. When the summons came, it was not from the queen but from her high council. They waited for him in the Hall of Ascendants, 12 towering figures encased in ceremonial armor, their forms indistinguishable beneath glimmering exoshells. At their center stood Viral, that's herself, her expression carved from ice. Elias Ward of Terra, one of the counselors declared, their voice amplified through psychic resonance, "You have compromised the sanctity of the throne." "I fixed your reactor," Elias said evenly. "If that's treason, you might want to redefine your laws." The chamber vibrated with disapproval. "Your insolence contaminates her grace. The human virus must be purged before it spreads." Elias looked to the queen. She didn't meet his eyes. Her silence felt colder than any insult. He spoke again, softer this time. "Is that what this is then? A purge of curiosity?" Still nothing. Only the faint hum of the palace walls, as though they too were waiting for her to speak. Finally the queen raised a hand. "Enough." Her voice was controlled, regal, but there was an edge beneath it, something uncertain. "He will not be executed." Gasps rippled through the hall. The counselors protested at once, psychic voices clashing in a storm of outrage. "You endanger the Dominion with this indulgence," one shouted. "Then the Dominion is weaker than I thought," she replied. Her tone silenced them all. "I decide what is contamination." That should have been the end of it, but Elias saw the look in her eyes, the flicker of fear behind authority. She had defied her own counsel to protect him, but it would not last. He was already a weapon pointed at her rule, whether she wanted him or not. Later that night, he was escorted under armed guard through winding corridors deep into the palace's core. The queen waited in a chamber he had never seen before, the Heart Nexus, a vast circular room of living crystal and soft blue light. Here, the palace's energy converged, the lattice glowing with patterns that seemed to breathe. When the guards withdrew, she turned to him. "You are not safe here." He gave a dry smile. "I noticed. The council will not stop. They will move against me now. Against you. You could stop them." She looked away. "Not without igniting a civil fracture. They believe you have corrupted me." "Have I?" he asked quietly. Her eyes lifted to his, unreadable. "Yes. You have made me remember what it means to feel." The confession hung between them like charged air. Elias stepped closer, drawn not by courage but by something deeper, recognition. "Then maybe you're finally alive." Her breath caught. "You shouldn't speak to me like that." Then stop listening. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the world. Then she moved toward him, slow, deliberate. The faint bio-light danced across her face, softening her alien features into something almost human. Her hand rose to his chest, fingers brushing the fabric of his uniform. "You risk everything by standing here." "So do you," he murmured. Her voice faltered. "Why do you not hate me? I enslaved your kind." "Because hate's easy," he said. "And I've seen what it turns people into." She hesitated, and then, as if surrendering to gravity itself, kissed him. It was not soft or graceful, it was the collision of two worlds that should never have met. The palace seemed to tremble with the force of it, the living lattice flaring brighter, responding to the queen's unguarded emotion. But the moment shattered with the sound of an explosion. The door burst open, guards flooding the chamber, weapons drawn. The High Council had made their move. "Seize him," one shouted. Viral spun, her psychic power slamming through the air like a storm. Several guards were thrown back, armor shattering under invisible force. But one aimed a plasma spear and fired. Elias moved without thought. The bolt struck him squarely in the side. Light and pain flared, white and merciless. He fell, breath ragged, as the queen's scream echoed through the chamber. She caught him before he hit the floor, her hands trembling. His blood, red, vivid, utterly alien to her world, spilled across the crystal floor and sank into the lattice. The glowing veins turned crimson, the entire palace pulsing like a heart gone mad. "Stay with me," she whispered, pressing her hand to the wound. The palace's energy flowed wildly now, tendrils of light crawling up the walls, responding to his touch, to her panic. Elias struggled for air, his voice faint but steady. You always wanted control, now look. He gestured weakly at the chaos blooming around them. Can't command love, Viral? Can only feel it. Her tears shimmered in the alien light. Do not speak. Too late for that, he rasped. Guess I finally broke something you can't fix. The guards hesitated at the threshold, terrified of the power storm consuming the chamber. Viral pressed her forehead to his, her voice breaking. I will not let you die. Then, don't let what I gave you die with me. His hand tightened once around hers, then fell still. The queen's power exploded outward, a psychic shockwave that shattered the floor and sent a pulse through every lattice conduit in the palace. The energy that had once obeyed only her mind now surged with something new, something human. As his body went still, his neural signature bled into the palace network, merging with its systems. The lights shifted from cold blue to warm gold. Across the capital, machinery halted, the city itself trembling as if alive. The guards fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the force radiating from the nexus. The queen, eyes blazing, rose slowly, her voice cutting through the chaos. You wanted obedience, she said to the unseen council above. Now you'll learn what it costs. The palace answered with a deep, resonant pulse that shook the skies. Elias Ward was gone, but his defiance remained, woven into the living bones of her empire, a heartbeat that would never fade. And as the queen stood in the ruins of her perfect world, she realized the truth too late. She hadn't lost a servant. She had lost the only thing that had ever been real. The palace no longer hummed with obedience. It breathed. The vast lattice that once pulsed in cold rhythm to the queen's will now throbbed with something warmer, erratic, alive. Elias Ward's essence had fused into its neural core, his consciousness scattered through the crystalline veins of the Dominion itself. He was nowhere and everywhere at once, a whisper in every circuit, a heartbeat beneath every pulse of light. For 3 days, the queen had neither slept nor spoken to her council. The Nexus chamber lay sealed, wrapped in a cocoon of psychic storms that no one dared breach. From the outside, the biolume walls glowed gold, an unnatural hue, human warmth infecting alien perfection. Inside, she sat upon the shattered remains of her throne, her eyes closed, her voice murmuring to a ghost she could not touch. Elias, she whispered into the silence, if you still exist within this, give me a sign. The lattice flickered, hesitant, a faint ripple through the air like a breath drawn in surprise. I told you not to mourn me, his voice came, distant but clear, carried through the crystalline vibration. But you were never one to listen. Her chest tightened. You're still here. Fragments, he said softly. I'm part of your world now, whether they like it or not. She stood, every movement heavy with the weight of defiance and loss. The council is preparing to overthrow me. They will erase every trace of you, of us. Then stop them. You don't understand, she snapped, her control faltering for the first time. Without you, the palace's systems are unstable. The Dominion teeters on collapse. I need your mind too. You need my choice, he interrupted gently. And that's something you can't command. His tone wasn't cruel. It was simply human, raw, defiant, weary. The very thing that had drawn her to him. Outside, thunder rolled across the biolume sky. The High Council had arrived with their fleets, 1,000 ships circling the capital, their weapons shimmering like blades of starlight. The city's population watched in terror as the sky itself fractured under the weight of rebellion. Viral, that's of Thauron, the lead counselor's psychic voice boomed across the network. By decree of the Dominion, you are unfit to rule. The human corruption you sheltered has diseased your mind and our world. Step down or be purged. The queen stepped to the edge of the shattered balcony, her silver armor reflecting the golden glow that now radiated from the palace core. You fear corruption, she said, her voice amplified across the capital. But what you truly fear is change. Then you admit it, the counselor spat. You have betrayed our blood. No, she said softly. I have remembered what it means to have one. At her words, the palace came alive. The lattice pulsed gold, and across the Dominion's network, systems responded, not to the council's commands but to something new. Something human. The fusion of Elias's consciousness with the Thauron architecture had rewritten the Dominion's code, rewriting loyalty itself. You gave them freedom, she realized aloud. His voice echoed faintly in her mind. Didn't you always want a throne that ruled by choice, not fear? Ships began to break formation, their crews refusing the council's directives. Across the fleets, soldiers hesitated, their minds filled with alien signals. not orders but emotions. Compassion. Regret. The echo of Elias Ward's defiance rippled through their ranks like a contagion of conscience. The council panicked, unleashing fire upon the capital. The sky ignited. Plasma storms rained down, tearing through the Queen's city of glass and light. The people screamed. The Queen raised her hands, power roaring through her veins. She tried to shield them, to hold back the onslaught, but the force was too great, until the palace itself joined her. Gold light surged upward from the nexus, forming a massive energy barrier that curved over the city like a living dome. "Elias," she gasped. "You're helping me." "I'm helping them," came his voice, fading and brightening with the rhythm of the lattice. "You wanted to protect your people. So did I." The barrier trembled under the relentless assault. Every blast drained more of his remaining essence into the defense grid. She could feel him slipping, not dying but dissolving, his consciousness scattering further with each pulse. "Don't do this," she shouted into the golden storm. "You'll disappear." A faint chuckle rippled through the light. "I already did. This is just me, finishing the job." The last blast struck, a sunbright explosion that could have erased the capital. But instead of destruction, the sky went white, then still. When the light cleared, the fleets were gone, their ships drifting powerless, their weapons silent. The barrier remained, flickering gently, alive but fading. The Queen fell to her knees, trembling. The city was safe. The council's rebellion was over. Yet the silence that followed was unbearable. "Elias," she whispered. "Nothing. Only the soft hum of the palace's breathing light." Then, faintly, a whisper like wind through crystal. "Told you once, Your Majesty, love's not obedience. It's sacrifice." The glow dimmed slowly, settling into a steady pulse. One heartbeat. Hers alone. In the aftermath, the Dominion changed. No longer ruled by terror but by choice. The Queen dissolved the council, granting autonomy to each world within her reach. The golden pulse, the Ward signal, as it came to be known, remained in every structure built from that day forward. A living reminder of the human who had taught an empire how to feel. At night, she would walk through the silent halls of the new palace, rebuilt from the ruins of the old, and place her hand on the core crystal. Sometimes it warmed beneath her touch, faintly as if answering. And she would smile through her tears. "Still defiant," she'd whisper. "Still human." Above the capital, two suns rose together for the first time. One alien, one human, bound by light, by memory, by love stronger than obedience. Across the stars, the story spread, of the Queen who fell for her slave, and the man who taught the galaxy that hearts, once awakened, could never again be ruled. And somewhere, in the endless hum of the cosmos, a faint voice laughed softly, echoing through eternity. "Guess I did corrupt you after all."